welcome to this week's episode of the Digital North. This week we're talking about The Place Beyond the Pines, and I'm glad that Nate and Thomas were on point when we recorded this episode because my notes and my mind were a little bit scattered. And one of the points that I really wanted to talk about that I'm not sure that I articulated well in the episode was the way that the main characters were treated in this film. And I know that I've spoken about my fascination of viewing things at different scales on this podcast before. And one of my favorite things about the film was, I guess, the volume of central characters that we were made to empathize with. And I don't mean that the ensemble was large of total characters that we had, but I really liked that we had at least 4 main characters who were given independent story arcs and were given the time to really mean something and really kind of ingratiate themselves into our psyches before our expectations for them were subverted in a dramatic way, leading to a lot of emotional confusion for us as an audience. So I just thought it was cool that we not only had one main character that we really liked and empathized with and tried to understand, but we had, at least for me, if I'm counting correctly, 4, which were given this story arc and were given the time and space to really mean something. So I thought that was really cool. That was one of the things that I thought that The Place Beyond the Pines really did well. And so just one more note before we begin this week's episode. Beginning later this month, I will be launching a new podcast called Learner's Permit. It's an interview-based podcast where I meet with young experts and talk with them about their craft. So I have already interviewed a yogi who I was studying with last year, who comes from India, and I was teaching kind of like a yoga/mobility class last year at a gym, and so I have some experience with what yoga and what stretching in the West, in America and Norway are like. And he has a really interesting viewpoint because he formerly studied yoga in India because he is an Indian. And I really tried to talk about in that interview kind of the differences between the Western and the Eastern conceptualization of yoga. So that was an interview that I really appreciated. And I currently have interviews lined up with a couple of musicians, a philosopher, and a poet. So make sure to keep a lookout for new episodes of Learner's Permit. I'll be announcing them first on Facebook and then eventually on CuriousMagnet.com after we get our website overhaul. So I'm very excited about that, and I will make sure to let you all know when those episodes are available. So without further ado, let's talk about The Place Beyond the Pines. Alrighty. So I'm Ryan Hamilton. Joined with me today are Nathaniel Sand and
That's me.
Thomas Harms.
Hello.
The movie we're going to be talking about today is The Place Beyond the Pines. It's a 2012 film by Derek Cianfrance. And Thomas, this was your Cianfrance. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It might be Italian.
Me
I
neither.
don't really care. Difficult last name, but good director. So, Thomas, this was your suggestion. So why don't you take it away and tell us what some of your what some of your favorite parts of the movie were.
Favorite parts? Well, I guess I'd have to go a little later into the film where, well, I don't know if I want to give the whole backstory yet, but I guess
Okay.
after Luke's son meets up with, I believe, Robin, the guy who owns the garage, just kind of one of the little comments that he made. He was asking about Luke's bike, and he said the police cut it up. They were real mad with him. And it was one of those moments where they were both kind of like, I don't know, commiserating a little bit, but without knowing it for the most part, because he found those glasses, kind of gave it to him. And it was, I don't know, all kind of just a moment of Luke being remembered in a positive light, even though he was kind of at first a bad guy. He was kind of just a flip in the end where they were looking back in a positive light, and I really kind of liked that flip. It surprised me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Hey,
nice.
can I interject something real quick?
Please.
Are we working under the assumption that our listeners have already seen this film?
Always. Yes.
Okay, cool,
Yes.
cool.
Always.
That's
Yeah,
all.
I don't think that we ever need to give like plot points to like help guide people. I
Hmm.
mean, why would you listen to a podcast on this film if you hadn't seen it already?
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
They just want to listen to our voices, probably.
um,
They only listen to us voices. Yeah.
yeah. Well, there's no video, so that's probably why they just listen to voices.
And I guess I would also agree with Ryan when he said it was pretty good directing because with those cuts to the pretty much three different perspectives, Luke when he gets shot, switching to the cop, and then the cop's son and Luke's son was a very good way of kind of showing. I don't know. I just feel like the two cuts to those two perspectives were a perfect way to kind of preserve. I not preserve, but keep the presence of those other two characters in the film, especially Luke.
Yeah.
And
Luke, yeah, I know the names are kind of difficult.
what
So
I can't remember the cop's name for the life of me.
yeah, I had to look it up.
Bradley
Avery.
Cooper.
Avery.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper, Avery. Yes, okay. And Avery, I guess he is still in the film, obviously, but yeah, his connection with Luke and how he keeps popping up, especially that picture in the wallet. But yeah, I liked how they kept those three connected.
Yeah. Nate, what about you? What are your kind of first looks at the film? What did you
Well,
like?
all of my first looks were actually second looks at this film because I'd seen it before.
Ooh.
Um, but I didn't quite remember everything that was going on. And for parts of it, I conflated the movie Drive, which also is a Ryan Gosling helmed, uh, kind of purse-lipped, not not very outspoken fella, just kind of going through a kind of grisly existence. And so I was waiting for a couple of scenes that I remembered in Drive to appear in this movie because I mixed them up, and they never came.
Were you waiting for a guy
Particularly
to get
that
like stomped out in the elevator or something like that?
no, that motel scene actually, that pretty grisly motel scene in Drive. But that quickly I faded away. I rewatching this film thoroughly enjoyed the first third. Um,
Oh.
I thought it was gorgeous. The opening with Ryan Gosling, his character Luke, um, swishing around his switchblade and just following him through the fair, and all of the scenes of him driving his bike through New York, I guess upstate, where I guess wherever Schenectady is. Um, I assume somewhere kind of upstate. I don't actually know, but just really lush scenery, a very vibrant and well paced camera work. The cinematography I thought was pretty excellently done throughout the entire film.
Hmm.
Um, and so I liked that about it. I liked but when it started to move into I really liked that Ryan Gosling's character died. Not just because like I didn't like his character, but I thought it was a really interesting way to tell a story, right? Because you start out with this character and you think that you're going to be following this guy and you're going to maybe follow his arc of redemption, but you don't. He dies, and it's an abrupt shift in story and plot, and then all of a sudden you're thrust on the other perspective of Bradley Cooper and his family life, and I like that part as well, but it I didn't like it as much as the first part because they weren't able to take their time with it anymore because they had to start driving more of the story to make the end make more sense.
Hmm.
And I understand that. That makes a lot of sense, and they did a good job with it still. But I just loved the slow pace and the kind of unfolding of the first third, where they just showed this character and they took their time with it and they really savored the shots. And I think they did that also more towards the end in the final kind of, I guess, I break it up into thirds. The first part with Ryan Gosling, the second part with Bradley Cooper, and then the third part
With their
15
kids.
years later, yeah, with the kids.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they kind of tied it back into that with more of the slow shots on the denouement of the film. But
There were there are a few points that you made in that I really would like to go back to.
sure.
Maybe we could. I guess let's start with the point of view because I thought that because I hadn't seen this film before, I was really enthralled by the first half an hour. And I mean, like some of the beginning of the film seemed a little bit like cliched. Like for instance, it seemed like a very typical Ryan Gosling role, like a damaged, sexy blonde with
handsome
anxiety.
Luke.
Yeah, it seemed very
Yeah,
like
that's funny.
Gosling-esque. But I really enjoyed how when he was playing with the butterfly knife, and he stabbed into the wall, we get this really cool, like almost like shaky cam following him. And I want to go back to the camera work afterwards, but I thought it was really cool that it subverted some of my expectations, like because I saw that the movie was 2 hours and 20 minutes, and so I I had to like wonder where the film was gonna go when in the first half an hour he already attacks his baby mama's boyfriend, like the fact that he attacks Ava Mendes's husband at the time, or maybe not husband by then, but Kofi. The fact that like Kofi
Yeah.
is attacked in like the first half an hour made me think like, what is the story arc gonna be? Because there's a like old rule of like screenwriting. I don't remember what it's called, but basically it states that if there's a gun in the first act, it has to be used by the third act. And the gun that we see,
Chekhov's gun.
say it again.
Chekhov's gun.
Chekhov's gun. The Chekhov's gun that we see is the butterfly knife at the beginning, in the opening scenes when Gosling is doing his butterfly knifing, not his butter knifing, but his butterfly knifing. He stabs it into the wall. That is a foreshadowing that there's going to be violence in the film. And then the film kind of subverts my idea that it happens in the third act by just happening like immediately. I thought that was just so well done. That was so cool. The fact that this film had that ebb and flow, because it's all about Gosling's story arc, and then at the end of his story arc, as he starts to kind of unravel as a character, it just switches point of view to Bradley Cooper, just like out of just nowhere. And I thought it was so cool because there aren't many films that I've seen aside from like Pulp Fiction that have like a main character shift. And I thought it was really cool that the movie began with us empathizing with Gosling and really trying to like respect him as a character. We know he's damaged goods and that he's got like some anxiety or whatever, but then the fact that he wants to be in his son's life makes us really like care about him. And then he goes into the baby's room and starts to build a crib, and we think like, oh, maybe he means well. And then he attacks Kofi, and like very clearly like we turn on him as an audience. It's harder to empathize with him. Whereas with Bradley Cooper, I really like that we enjoy Bradley Cooper, at least I did, for the first moments, because he was like the ideal of like pristine police like professionalism. He was cool, he was collected, he seemed to do everything that he should have, up until the point where he just shot Gosling. And then when he was meeting with the internal affairs agent or whoever that older guy was, when he started lying to him about what happened, seemingly for no reason. So I just thought, for me personally, I really liked the point of view shift, which happened at least 3 times, since we had at least like 4 major characters, right? We had Gosling, we had Cooper, and then we had both of their sons. So that and kind of the subversion of cliche that I was expecting was really well done, in my opinion.
I totally agree with that. The shifting of the story and the perspectives of whose story you're following, I thought was super well done and like believable too. Like I enjoyed that. You expect Gosling to get away to a certain extent. He's being chased, and you expect him to just somehow miraculously like get out of this house, but he doesn't. And that's pretty much how like life would go. He would be trapped in his house, and he would either get shot or like eventually he'd get killed, right? He
Yep.
has no way out, and so he does. He just gets killed. Like, and
Yeah.
it happens quickly. It happens kind of senselessly. Bradley Cooper, I mean, shoots him understandably though, because Ryan Gosling has a gun, and he has it pointed at his character.
Well, he
And
doesn't have a
so,
point at his character. It's in his hand, right? And that's the entire thing. He never raised his
well,
hand to shoot him. He was shot first.
no, I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know how I'd react in that situation.
Right. No.
I
I do agree with you.
uh
I definitely agree that that is probably realistic. That if a cop
hmm
like came into a situation like that with a known armed robber, who had just invaded someone's home, that he would probably shoot first,
Yeah,
without
and
asking questions.
so I didn't like dislike Bradley Cooper's character for that. What's his name again? Avery, right?
Avery.
Avery. And um, yeah, so I thought that was realistically done, and I thought it was neat how then they shifted perspectives on him, and then what the repercussions were for that, and the way the whole story tied together, and wove itself, and almost inevitably, I guess how to put it is that it happened almost inevitably, but it didn't happen like
Predictably.
in a predictably like kind of like, oh well, obviously this is going to happen in this, in a like cookie cutter way. It wasn't like this is obviously all set up and it's all just a story. It happened in such a way that made it believable to have this family drama, these two families be connected and continue to be connected through this one link,
Yeah, and
that
it
one
truly
moment.
was like a family drama in the classical sense of it, where it is
Mhm.
basically like two rivaling clans, but on a micro scale.
Mm.
Very
And
well put.
like, yeah.
Speaking of the almost like inevitability of what happens, it seems like one of the big takeaways from the film, at least when it wraps up, is the cyclical nature of families, or the cyclical nature of like I mean, it seems like a big part of the film, at least for Bradley Cooper's character, was that the sins of your past will come back to haunt you.
The sins of the father, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like the idea that like what well, not even like the sins of the father, because it happened during Bradley Cooper's life. Although it was, yeah, it was true that it was the sins of the father because his son was attacked. But the idea that like there is a reckoning for what you do, seemed to be true for Avery's character. And I thought it was really interesting that both times when he was going to be like punished for something that he did, it was in the place beyond the pines. It was deep in the woods, like when Ray Liotta's character tried to take him out into the woods to either kill him or intimidate him or whatever he was planning on doing. And that was almost like Bradley Cooper's punishment for going out with him that night and being complicit in the robbery of
hmm
Eva Mendes' character. And then the fact that that is pretty much the exact same spot that Luke's son took him to. I don't remember
Jason.
Jason. The fact that that
hmm
was Jason's place to take him to, I think, was significant.
Definitely.
Yeah, and that's where Ryan Gosling's character pretty much had that was shacked up with that repair shop kind of that was also out in the woods, and where they planned their robberies and stuff. Fun
Sure.
fact, I was looking on IMDb on their little fact section of the movie, and I don't know if this is true or not. I didn't verify this, but apparently Schenectady, whatever, however you pronounce it, it means I forget what tribe it is, what Native American tribe means place beyond the pines.
Oh.
Really?
That's what it means in the and I can look this up quick, but apparently that's what it said on IMDb. So that's kind of interesting too. And the
That's
director
cool.
I was reading was very particular about setting this in Schenectady. And I know the producers, it said, wanted to film it in like North Carolina because tax codes were like, uh, more lenient and stuff. But he was very insistent on filming in Schenectady. And a lot of it was filmed just right around there.
Okay.
That's cool.
And also going back to Schenectady.
I know, man, it's hard.
I like that this is the second film that we've talked about that uses Schenectady because
Hmm.
Synecdoche, oh my God,
Yep.
Synecdoche, New York,
Yep.
was also set in Schenectady.
Let's just call it Sneck.
Snack.
Snack.
Just be wrong.
So
Sneck.
New York.
New York. That was cool. Yeah, but then also we have like the cyclical nature of the families where we have, Ryan Gosling said, I was raised without a father and look how I turned out. And the idea that his son was also raised without him because of the decisions that he made. And then you have his son who ends up his son who likes to bicycle. His son always has a bicycle in the way that Gosling's character always
Hmm.
had his
Hmm.
motorcycle, and then eventually buys a motorcycle to have seemingly no plan and just go out west somewhere. And then you also have Avery's son, who seems like this black sheep of the family and seems to have like some like scorn, but also a lot of like admiration for his father. When Avery is finally elected, the like assistant, like I don't know, the district attorney or like whatever,
Attorney, yeah.
attorney general.
Attorney General for New York.
Yeah, when he was attorney general for New York, you see this look in his son's eyes that went from like scorn and like fear to like admiration and respect. And you could see that he was going to try to make the same decisions that his father made. And you could see like this fact that like just things repeat and that you can't really get
Hmm.
out of like this family
Well,
gene that's
not
created for you.
necessarily, because I'd argue that this is a tale of redemption in a kind of classical sense, because it does harken back to that sins of the father. You can't escape the iniquities of whatever, and it shall be passed down, whatever numbers, blah 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 in the Bible. But Ryan Gosling's son does. He had the choice to kill that the man, I forget the kids' names. The
Both
Avery's son.
Averys.
Yeah, yeah. He has a choice to kill him, and we don't know if he did actually at the point when he brings uh, Avery out to the woods and
Right.
has the gun pointed at him, makes him kneel,
Hmm.
and so that by that point we don't know whether he killed him or not. And I think that was a really kind of nice, clever way to do that because we don't know what's going to happen, right? We don't know whether he's going to choose to kill this guy. We don't know if he did it before, but he chooses not to. He chooses not to kill either the son or the father. He chooses just to get out, whereas Ryan Gosling's character couldn't get out, and he got in it, and he got in way too deep. And so
But it
I think in a
seems
sense,
to it seems to me that Gosling's son is going to do exactly what Gosling did. It seems that he buys a motorcycle, he heads out, and in the same way that Gosling was part of a traveling circus, his son has no idea where he wants to go. He is without family, and I thought that it alluded to the fact that he is probably going to just, have a life of just being a vagabond and probably accidentally impregnate someone along the way.
but he had a choice. He had a choice for violence, and in the film, again and again, Ryan Gosling's character chose violence.
But then,
He
yes.
spasmodically just beat Kofi. He chose to rob banks, and he made those decisions. Whereas
True.
his son also is violent, right? He does get a gun. He does whack the
Oh, he
Avery's
whacked him.
son over the head. But that being said, Avery's son was an asshole. Like, and it doesn't justify the violence, but it also like explains why he might be driven to do that. Like, whereas Ryan Gosling's character, when Kofi was like, "Hey man, get out of my house, stop making that crib," he had no justification to just whack him.
Yeah,
So,
but
I don't
would
know.
also, I guess to like further the argument that I think that they kind of have to inevitably do what their fathers did. Like, it seemed really interesting that Gosling and his son were so easily influenced by like negative influences because Gosling he found this charismatic or like nice or eager repairman and was talked into robbing banks like less than a month later.
Mhm.
Whereas we have his son who's at the lunch table and he immediately gets talked into like ditching class to get high with this guy and then buying oxys for him the next day, or
But
sorry, buying ecstasy.
we don't know. we don't know if he also had drug problems before that. We never had his backstory up to that point, so we don't know if he
No,
was also just
no,
this kind of stoner
but
dropout
we
kid.
do know that he did not initiate that like friendship or that relationship. We do
True,
know
that's true.
that it was Avery's son who is the one who said, "Let's go get high. Let's go buy ecstasy." And
Yeah.
he was also the guy who, forced him into getting like oxy for him, or didn't force him, but like very
Mhm.
easily coerced him into doing it. And so it also seems that like Cooper Cooper is a relatively conniving or relatively like I don't know. He says he's not calculated, but he makes decisions which will further his career and like further his interests. Whereas Gosling and his son are both liable to be influenced by people like that. And so I thought that was really interesting that like the personalities of the fathers and sons were at least in some ways realistically connected.
Hmm.
I thought that was cool.
I th- I thought the movie also got a lot of small things kind of nice. Like for example, when it cuts to the 15 years later between the second and kind of third parts, um, it never states it, but it's Bradley Cooper and his wife are divorced by that point, right? And
Hmm.
they're at least they're not together,
Yeah, I think they're separated
which
because
they
I think his son said that they're married or something like that. I think it was mentioned once that they're
maybe,
married, but yes, definitely separated.
yeah, not together at least, and um, just subtle things like that it didn't ever have to state it really. It just implied it, and that says a lot. Like, right, 15 years had passed at that point. That's a lot of time, um,
Hmm.
and it begs a lot of questions. Like, when did that happen? Like, you can see that Bradley Cooper's um, in the second part, you can see that it was a big stress for his wife for him to be a cop, not just because of all the danger, but because of the friends that he had that were, uh, friends that said stuff like and 10 extra points because I was a white guy, like
Yeah.
like stuff like that. And when did the straw, what was the final straw for that? And the film doesn't nicely and tidily answer questions like that. For everything, it doesn't give you all the reasons for like why uh man, now I can't even think. Ryan Gosling, his name escaped me. Um, like why his motivation for things, or like what the repairman's doing, or what his backstory is. It just kind of puts you there in that situation, um, and lets you kind of do a little bit of legwork yourself for figuring out motivation.
I like that it laid the groundwork for those things. Like it was very clear that Avery's wife was not happy in their
Hmm.
relationship, and it was very clear that like Avery was going to have a strained relationship with his son because he had a strained relationship since he was a baby. And I thought it was really cool that you're right. It didn't necessarily need to hold your hand through these things, but
Hmm.
they're also not really curveballs because the groundwork is laid.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so that was nice. It seemed appropriate for what we had learned about them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I thought it was really interesting how they did or didn't age the characters because
Yeah.
it was really only Ava Mendez's character that looked like she had aged, and they did it by making her hair like wonky with a little bit of gray. But like
Great.
Yeah.
the repairman looked younger.
Yeah, he
Like
looked the
he looked
same.
healthier and
Yeah.
fresher.
His voice was different though. I thought his voice was a little more gravelly though.
Okay.
That may have been just
Yeah.
I thought his voice was a little more just like hoarse, like he's been smoking 15 years longer.
He just like
Yeah.
he had like when it was I guess it was also because of what he was wearing, but when Ryan Gosling's son meets him for the first time, like he's wearing like the nicest shirt that he's worn in the entire movie, and they didn't give him that like black eyeshadow and that like really like sullen ashy look that he had in one of the last scenes that we see with him and
Yeah.
Gosling.
When he was drunk. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Those are some greasy kids though, man. Like they
Yeah.
They
just like
captured that well. Yeah.
some sweaty looking teens.
Oh man, I was on the
Uh,
bus today. I was on the bus today, and there was a sweaty, moody, mustached 14-year-old, and I, I mean, like I think that's pretty realistic. The
Yeah.
oil is real.
Yeah.
The oil is real.
The grease. Let's talk about that though. Let's talk about the whole set design and the mise en scene of this film. What did you guys think of it? Like
I
Thomas, what did you think
Yeah,
of it?
Thomas, what do you
I
think of it?
really liked when, like you mentioned earlier, the carnival scene, like the intro especially. It seemed a
Mhm.
little weird at first, like it was a little too bright or a little too neon. It was had some weird filter or something, but I think it was kind of just getting used to how they were filming that scene. But I did really enjoy it, and I especially liked his, I guess, the scenery as well. Scenery was really really well done at first, and then I guess transferring over to Avery, the father. I guess his son's name is Avery as well, isn't it?
I
They
think
just
so.
call him
I'm not sure.
AJ. Yeah. So the
Oh yeah, that's right, because
yeah,
they call him like AJ. Yep.
but they just call him AJ. And then going over to Avery the father. In the police scenes, I guess that was more just a build up to his character, kind of showing how he was trying to do the right thing, being a good cop, and there wasn't as much to look at for that, but it was just story building, I would say. But mostly in the Luke's first third of the film, it was just beautiful.
Hmm. Yeah, like I like the costumes quite a bit. I thought it like Ryan Gosling's character always wearing those just terribly ratty t-shirts, just inside out and backwards, and um
Yeah,
like I could see where that would almost be too much in different films, but I thought it really worked for like his character. He just didn't care what he was wearing. He just wore the same thing until it just fell off his body. Um
and his
and
tattoos were just terrible.
uh-huh. It's like, what did it say
Like did
across
him
his neck? Did
himself.
Any of you catch that? Like what it
Heartthrobs.
actually
It said
Heartthrobs.
heartthrob
Yeah,
because his motorcycle group was so and so in the heartthrobs.
handsome
Oh,
Luke and
okay.
Heartthrobs.
Yeah, handsome Luke in the heartthrobs.
Oh, that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
I was kind of trying to figure out what that said all movie.
Yeah.
He's got like fucking dagger with blood on his cheek. It's classic. That's
Yeah.
badass.
I
Yeah.
Speaking of wardrobe, I think that wardrobe was used pretty well. And at least like I specifically noticed it with, I guess, Gosling's character and I guess AJ as well. Um, but like so Gosling's character, we were introduced with him in that cut off Metallica, I think it's Metallica, t-shirt, and he wears ratty things often. But when he's with his son, and specifically on the day of his son's baptism, when he goes into church,
Mm.
he is wearing all white. And that is when he starts crying and when he
That
decides
was my.
that he wants to be a good person. So I thought that that
Mhm.
was a very, very clear use of wardrobe to show us like the inner workings of the character. And then, so he's introduced in that Metallica cutoff, and when he attacks Kofi, he's also wearing that Metallica cutoff. And so it's kind of like this is just who he is, and he's just reverting back to this like excitable, like anxious, like risk-taking person that he was when he was in the circus. And so, yeah, like apart from like his clothes falling off of him, I thought that there was some real deliberate use of like the
Oh yeah.
colors that he was wearing.
Hmm.
And then you also have AJ, who is always kind of looking like a trashy New York
A
white kid,
Guido.
a
Yeah.
Guido. And then when you have him on stage with Avery, when Avery is voted the attorney general, he is wearing a suit for the first time, which of course makes sense for that scene and like that setting.
Hmm.
But it's also the first time that we don't see him with that like trashy gold necklace too. So it's the first time that we really see him kind of come into the character that it's kind of that we can extrapolate that he hopes to become in the future, when he kind of becomes this like slick, um, I don't know, political essentially character that we imagine he might try to become because of his dad
Hmm.
and grandfather. So yeah, use of costume was really interesting throughout. Although like the first scene that we see Ava Mendes in, like her nipples are popping out, and they had to
Oh yeah.
like have known that that was happening? I always wonder like what their thought process is with that.
Well, that's part of like I have a couple of problems with this film. I overall liked it, but I do have a couple of things that I'd like to bring up. That's one of them. So this Ryan Gosling character is a circus performer. He goes from town to town, stays in town for what, maybe 5 days, 4 or 5 days, if that. And so he came to this one town a year ago, Schenectady, and hooked up with Eva Mendes, his character,
Yeah, he did.
and then presumably left, right? Not knowing that he got her pregnant, and not really knowing anything more than just that's what happened.
Yeah,
He hooked up.
and it says that they had like no communication
Yep.
since they saw.
And so he comes back, and Eva Mendes just comes to comes into this circus just to like see him. But it seems like their connection was just like, I don't know. Would their connection be that instantly strong? Because it seems like once Ryan Gosling did come into that money after that first bank job, he parked outside of Rosalind's house, her house, and the next scene was
She had a
them
weird
lying in
name.
bed together.
Romina. Was her
Romina,
name.
right? Yeah. And not Rosalind. Parked outside her house, and the next scene is them lying in bed together, and she's naked and presumably, post-coital, just hanging out. Like, that's a really strong attraction right there for just one hookup, and a whole year had passed, and she had a man. Like, what bond do you think they formed that first time they were together?
So your contention is that like you don't think that they would be that magnetized to each other? That
I don't know if they would be.
Decisions?
Like, I'm not saying that can't happen, but
I'd like to play the devil's advocate if I can.
Yeah, please do.
We know that Romina is conflicted all the time when she's with Gosling. So even in that scene that you had mentioned when they were laying next to each other with their sex juices all on the bed, she begins crying, and so you know that she is conflicted, and throughout the time that she spends with Gosling, she starts crying like during all of these important times. And then she also mentions that her life right now is working, trying to study, and raising the baby. And so what we know, and she said, I'm busy, I've got a lot of things to do. And I think that when she came to the carnival first, so clearly she was thinking about him. Maybe it was just to see who the father of her son was, or maybe nostalgia is a bit of a hell of a drug, and maybe she had been thinking about this man who she presumably had a great time with, or a great few days with, and then she sees evidence of him every day. So I would imagine that she probably pined for him. Place beyond the pines. Pined for him at least a little bit.
Schenectady.
At least a little bit, right? I mean, that's the father of her child, who she sees every day. She has to think about that time.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And so it also seems that like money is a big motivator for her, because she doesn't own the house. It's her man's house, as she said, and she doesn't really seem to have much ability to decide her own fate. And so when this exciting father of her child shows up and then starts like giving her money, or like has the promise of money, or the promise of taking care of their baby and freedom, especially like the idea that they would just take a trailer and drive wherever, maybe that was enough to get her hooked again.
All right, I'm convinced. You've convinced me, man. I can believe that.
All right.
I can get behind that. Behind that.
Although, so I was thinking earlier today that we see two black people in the film. We see Kofi, and Kofi doesn't really have much speaking roles. I guess it's nice that like Kofi is with Eva Mendes, and like he seems like a very nice guy. He wants to be the father to this boy. But we really don't. I guess we don't get much of a sense of his character. We get a sense of his moral character, and that he's a good guy. But like the only other black guy in the film is the drug dealer and weapons dealer for Gosling's kid, and I was a little bit disappointed that I mean, most white guys go to white drug dealers. I mean, we know that statistically, it's more likely that Gosling's son would probably have a white dealer. And so the fact that they kind of build this teenage black boy as a stereotypical drug dealer role was a little bit disappointing for me. I guess that was one of my bigger contentions with the film, and it's a relatively obscure contention, I guess. But,
No, it makes sense. What also was confusing about that was that when they went to score some X at that drug dealer's house, right after that, the cops showed up, right? So the cops obviously had to have known that that house, was the house of a drug dealer or something, and they walked out of it. Well, he goes back to that same house to get the drugs and stuff. What's up with that?
yeah.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah, I was expecting those cops to be like Ray Liotta and the other cops from Bradley Cooper's past, because I thought when it said 15 years later that not only would the sons be grown up, but that those crooked cops would probably be out of prison 15 years later and would probably be in the area again, and I thought that was going to be retribution, but it ended up not happening.
No. I mean, I don't think they let him back on the police force after that. After extortion.
No.
Man, that Ray Liotta is a sinister character in whatever he's in.
He is. That face. He's got a sinister face, that's for sure.
Yeah,
Can't escape that face.
Especially the left side. He has that really distinct wrinkle from the outside of his left eye going down past his mouth. And it looks like a deep scar when he smiles on that side, and it's just it's sinister.
Sinister, yeah.
Speaking
Ryan,
of
you mentioned before
the camera work.
After you.
Is that what you're going to bring up?
Sure.
All right. I thought that the camera work is really interesting. I know it's not can you say mise en scene?
Mise en scene.
Mise en scene. I guess it's not technically mise en scene, but it is. It is something that I've been noticing more and more in films, and I really like the use of the shaky cam and kind of the handheld cam, and specifically who we see it used on, because it seems like we really only get a shaky cam on the main characters, and I thought that was really cool because the opening role when Ryan Gosling's playing with the butterfly knife and he stabs into the wall and then he walks into the carnival tent where he's gonna be doing his motorcycling. I thought that was really cool that we have this handheld cam following him, and that was really nice.
Technically a steady cam, not a shaky cam.
That's right, but it's a handheld. It's clearly a handheld. And then I thought it was, I thought that was really cool. And we also get a shaky cam with him when he is in the woods on the dirt bike. And I think that was a shaky cam that time.
Yeah, that was similar, more shaky. I'll grant you that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I thought it was really cool that when we start to have Cooper take over as the main character when he's still in the cop car, we get another handheld cam, and it becomes a bit of a shaky cam, I believe, when Cooper is in the car pursuing Gosling. And I thought it was really cool that very clearly the camera was centered on Cooper chasing Gosling, which is not how you would traditionally film that, because if you have your main character escaping from police, you would have the main character weaving in and out of traffic with maybe a couple of shots from a police's perspective, but the entire chase, pretty much since Cooper was introduced, was the camera following him chasing Gosling. And I thought that was a really cool use of that was the passing of the baton of main characters, from those first scenes with Cooper, even before he kills Gosling. So I thought that was cool again. I guess foreshadowing's too strong of a word to describe that, but I think it was, for me at least, it immediately became apparent that Cooper was going to become a major character based off of how that was filmed.
I didn't even realize that was Bradley Cooper until he got shot and he was recovering in the bed.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah, no, like I've seen this film before too, so it's even less excusable. But
That's
That's
true.
funny.
yeah, um,
And
this is what, 5 years ago? It's 6 years
2012.
ago now.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
crazy.
thought it was really cool too, that the camera was able to subjectively make us feel. I don't know how you guys felt about it, but when Gosling's son took the ecstasy and started drinking at that party, and the camera, I guess I don't like specifically remember the camera work, but you had this like trap music which took over almost all the audio, and you had these like kind of like you had him trashed clearly, but you would also have like these cuts where clearly there was a lot of time that passed during that party, and there wasn't like a clear like from point A to point B what happened. It was like point A to like point C or point D. Um, that subjective use of audio and that subjective use of like the camera and like maybe like the blacking out that that character was doing um, really affected me. Like I really like emotionally felt like I was in the state that Gosling's son was in when that happened. I felt kind of like a rush. I felt a little bit of like a nausea and like kind of like a like an empathy for like that like physiological state that he was in, and so that was to me really impressive use of sound and video.
I always think it's funny when they have drugs party scenes like that. I thought that party scene was actually just like a typical party scene. Like they film a lot of party scenes in kind of a disjointed, like, oh, whoa, kind of blearing the camera across
Yeah,
characters' faces, showing them that they're wasted and stuff. It's funny how they use music like that. They have heavy trap when he's walking in, but then everyone takes the oxy, and then all of a sudden it's just like wow, 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 and it
yeah,
slows down, and
yeah.
everything's just
Gets real
like they use
distorted.
music to kind of convey what drug that they're kind of amping on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I did enjoy that, but it's also I don't think that was particularly original to this movie though.
Okay.
Um, those
Fair
drug
enough.
scenes, but I don't know. That's just opinion. But
Yeah, I mean you're hating. That's fine. But I do agree. I
you
do agree.
specifically, Ron, not yeah, not your opinion, just you.
Fair enough. I
No,
thought it was.
I thought
Oh, continue, please.
I thought the cinemat. No, I just agree. I thought the cinematography was really it helped tell the story in a nice way. Like the opening shot was just one long shot all the way up until they were going around in that metal ball with their motorcycles.
Uh
That
huh.
was all just one take. And the first cut of the edit, I thought the editing of this film was really interesting too. The first cut wasn't actually a hard cut; it was a fade. And this film continued to utilize fades, I think, pretty effectively, uh, where one scene would kind of just dissipate into the next, and you'd be left with maybe an overlay of like a
Yeah,
character,
I
and
remember
then
the
something would change
overlays.
behind them, and then it would fade away. So I thought that was really cool. I enjoyed the editing quite a bit in this film.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah, I
sorry,
didn't
Ryan, what
really
were you gonna say?
realize that.
Well, what do you guys take away from the fact that, correct me if I'm wrong, but after Avery and AJ were attacked by Gosling's son, there was a news report on it, and the use of the news was typical, I guess, for mini films. I appreciate it, but I guess it was derivative, maybe. But I thought it was really interesting that I think that the news anchor said that it is a unidentified assailant who attacked them, um,
Mm-hmm.
because he was never he was never in trouble for what he did, and I thought it was really interesting that Cooper and his son would both say like I imagine maybe they agreed together, or maybe like Bradley Cooper told his son to just say that I have no idea who did it to me. Like I thought that was really
Mm-hmm.
interesting that they decided to hold their tongue on that.
Like, well, I mean, we
That
had a
is,
we had a evidence that they might have done that before when Bradley Cooper's character was telling his son like don't interact with that kid, and when he also gave him when he the Jason, right, the was in court for the drug charges. All of a sudden they learned that he would just be able to just do time served and just pay a fine instead of their usual whatever how many years. And that's obviously Bradley Cooper's character pulling the strings for him
Yeah.
and making sure that because he just feels so much guilt, still so much guilt for that. So I thought it was actually like pretty believable that and understandable that they'd either agree mutually or just tacitly agree that uh, that Bradley Cooper had done enough to screw that kid's life up anyway. Um, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess yeah, that's true. And I guess the fact that maybe he was just thankful that like his son wasn't killed. But I just thought
Hmm.
that was an interesting idea that he just decided to just drop it because he could have said like this is the son of the man who shot me in the leg and use that to his. I thought that could have been like political leverage, but the fact that he decided to say like it was an unidentified assailant, I mean that almost makes it seem fishy.
That
Like that
endeared me
almost
to his character more, I guess,
yeah.
because yeah,
Yeah, me too. I guess it just seemed like he didn't
it,
owe him any favors, although clearly he felt like he did. Clearly he felt like
I
he
mean,
had
he
done
he
something
he
wrong.
he
Killed
carried
his
that picture
top.
around in his wallet for 15 years,
Yeah,
like
that's
That's
true.
more
true.
than
Yeah.
15 years. Um,
And I
so
thought it
I'd
was it
imagine
was
he's
interesting
just still
too.
feels that
It
guilt.
was interesting too that like Cooper stole large amounts of money from Ava Mendez when her son was a baby. Or he didn't do it, but I mean, like he was a part of the group that did it. And I thought it was really interesting
Hmm.
that not only did his son recover, um, like that picture of like his dad and him, but he also recovered several $100s because it was very clear, like it showed us that Cooper had several $100 bills in his wallet. And so I thought that was
Hmm.
also kind of like this idea that like your past will come back to haunt you in this film. Like your decisions affect you even in your own life. So I mean there is kind of like a karmic idea in this film,
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, the
which is
cyclical nature of a lot of the plot points was
uh-huh.
cool.
Yeah, and speaking of cyclical nature and money, I thought it was really interesting that you have Ryan Gosling originally like forcing the money into Ava Mendez right outside of her cafe at her car as she's leaving work. And then you have the same thing with Bradley Cooper when he tries to do it,
Yeah.
like at the same
That
place,
was
and he
funny.
says, "Just take the money," which is a direct quote from what Gosling's character said too.
Hmm.
So I thought that was cool.
Definitely. Did you guys have any particular favorite scenes that you thought were really well done? I, for one, I do. The Ryan, you mentioned it before, the scene where Ryan Gosling is in the church and he follows his baby um, to being baptized, right? And he sits in the back and he sits down in his white clothes. And I thought that scene was beautiful, let alone that cathedral was really grand, or whatever church they were in. Um, but I thought it was particularly poignant because as they started to say the Our Father,
The
I don't know
baby
if
starts
either of you
crying.
noticed. No, 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 no. Well, yes, that too. But as they're saying the Our Father, right at the words "Forgive us our trespasses," that's when Ryan Gosling starts to cry.
Mm.
And like I thought that was really poignant. Like either to mean that like he knows that he's fucked up, like forgive us our trespasses, our sins, and he just knows like either he knows he won't be able to be redeemed because he knows himself and he's just so frustrated, or whether he's just like trying to be a better person and get past those trespasses. And I thought that was just a really really well done scene. Just the that he started crying at that line, I thought, I don't know if it was on purpose, but it worked for me.
Yeah, that's cool. And speaking of crying, crying is done several times in this film, and I thought it was like especially important like when the baby cried, because the baby was crying during the baptism, and then most of the time when the baby was with Gosling, it was is very pacified. Like there was one scene where Gosling accidentally made the baby cry when he he put the baby on his motorcycle, which had just then been painted black, by the way, because his bike used to be mostly white. And he painted his motorcycle black, and he put the baby on it. The baby started crying because he didn't like it. But I thought it was really interesting that
So you rev the motor too, though.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. We assume it's the motor, right? Not the symbolism of the bike itself. But I thought it was really interesting that in the scene where Gosling attacks Kofi, he the baby's crying the entire time, except when Gosling takes his baby and starts walking down the stairs. The baby not only like stops crying, but it kind of like nuzzles him a little bit. And so like this idea that like he's trying to do right because like he knows that he should be a father to this boy, and this baby is kind of like responding to his love very easily. I thought that was interesting. And then it also actually raised a question for me. How do you guys think that they like coordinate babies crying in films? And like do you think it's ethical to like have babies cry on cue? Because it's very common to have like infants, like newborn babies in movies, and you have to make them cry or not cry during certain scenes. And how do you guys think that they like make babies cry in movies?
I don't know. I don't know if
really
they
know.
do specifically
You think
prompt
they
a baby
pinch
to
them?
cry.
Probably pinch them, right?
Well, I don't know. Maybe they just frame the scene, and if the baby cries, and if the baby's like off, like out of the shot, either if they want it to cry, they'll just add a baby crying track, to it, or they, I don't know. That's a good
I
question.
mean, because there are several scenes in movies, like it's kind of a repeating like motif or theme in films to have like a baby crying and then some character comes in when they need them most and soothes them, and the baby like stops crying on cue while they are like in the shot. Because I agree with you. If a baby's off off shot, they're just gonna have like baby crying noise, and that's gonna be
Mhm.
perfectly fine. But there are a lot of times where babies just get soothed in film or just start crying in film when they wouldn't necessarily otherwise do that.
Maybe just a lot of takes combined with having the presence of maybe the mother of the baby or the guardian of the baby
Sure. Yeah.
nearby.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I guess a lot of takes probably be it, and then yeah, you're right. Also, would you offer your babies up to be in a film?
I don't think so.
Yeah, maybe.
have my
Sorry, maybe this
child.
is off topic. Thomas, would
Depends on
you?
the film.
Yeah, if it's a
Where would I
sexy
put
film,
my
maybe.
first baby?
Thomas, what Tarantino movie would you prefer your baby to be in?
Oh man, is this that's tough. Well, that's not good for the health of my baby for the most part.
Is it Four Rooms?
What room
uh,
would you put the baby in?
which room?
Oh,
I mean, I don't
definitely
know.
the witch's
Definitely
room.
not Pulp Fiction.
Oof.
Yeah, definitely the witch's room.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Some titties.
Good for the baby.
It's good for the baby's health. Yeah, much better.
The baby cannot have like food insecurity issues with so many titties around. Like you have to imagine that has to be like psychologically healthy for a baby to see so many nipples, right?
Yep, that's
You'd ask
definitely the
that.
first thing I go with.
On that note, what did you guys think of the music in this film?
Music.
You know,
The score slash songs.
there were 3 moments in the film where I remember the music playing like a central role in my experience of it.
Hmm.
The first I already talked about, which was in the party scene, the use of like that like heavily distorted bass and trappy music. Yeah, I thought that was well done. Also, it was really interesting that let me see, where is it? It was with Bradley Cooper's character right after he gets shot and kind of becomes like this hero cop. His dad is in the pool talking to him about like being politically smart with this gunshot and like with the speech that he gave. And he says, people love a limp. Look at Roosevelt. And then Ave Maria, the song Ave Maria starts playing. And as Ave Maria is playing, they have this cut into Cooper re-entering the police department for the first time in a while, and all of his cops loving him. And so you have this idea of like, I don't know, Ave Maria is a Christian song, right? Isn't it about God or like
Yeah, Mother Mary or
Mother
whatever.
Mary? So we have this idea of like church being refuge symbolically in the film a couple of times, and I thought that was like Cooper like entering like his church, the church of like people loving him.
I like that.
Yeah. And then thirdly,
There were a few points. Oh, sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, just the last point. Thirdly, Bon Iver played.
Oh yeah,
the
I remember
closing
that
scene.
one. That was a good one.
Yeah, but sorry, Thomas, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to mention, I think there were one or two times where, with the first third of the film with Luke, Ryan Gosling's character, one of them specifically, I think, is when he stabs his knife into a wall or something or a table, and the rock music just starts playing some metal, and then just a second or two before the scene changes into him going into a rampage or something like that. And I thought that was kind of cool. Just scene's all kind of calm for a second, and it's still got that rock music going, and then it does the transition after a few seconds.
Yeah.
I think that happened like a couple of times. I like the sound carried over, but the scene changed. Like when he ride his motorcycle off into the night, but then the sound would still be the same motorcycle, but then it would cut to the daytime of him being somewhere else driving it. It helps continue and tie together different scenes, which I think is nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It was cool.
Nate, what about you? Was there something specific about the score that unsettled you, or that was really really impressive to you?
I enjoyed the score quite a bit. The original score. I don't know. I don't know who it's by. But then I thought that the use of piano. There are a couple of kind of more just like more sparse, kind of heavy like single note drumming piano that helped kind of convey tension in different scenes really well, or conveyed like, I don't know, just it matched well, especially in that first third with the big sweeping shots of these lush forests and through these woods. And I thought the music matched up nicely with the tone of what they wanted to convey. And then it helped, elevate the tone to even better. They used music like Arvo Part, which when I looked up the score, I thought was really interesting. He's a kind of minimalist composer who I enjoy. They used the song Fratters, something Fratters by him, which I was familiar with. So I thought it was kind of cool to hear that in a film. And then the use of like Bruce Springsteen after their first bank heist went well. They used Dancing in the Dark by Bruce Springsteen, and they just celebrate, dancing with that erect dog.
The dog wasn't erect.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
No,
I'm pretty sure.
He just had a penis, I think.
I don't know, man. Either way,
Dancing with that erect dog.
What was? I don't know, man.
I don't know.
Maybe it was just a tale. I might be seeing what I want to see. Who knows? And then Bon Iver at the end, I thought was kind of cool that they used that. But yeah, I thought the use of sound, both diegetic and non-diegetic, was really good.
For our listeners,
really...
diegetic music is music where the characters
or
are
sound
doing
too.
the song, and if you're at a party, you're listening to the same music that the characters are listening to. And non-diegetic is like soundtrack music, right?
Yep, and that goes for like voiceovers and stuff too. Just like talking in a film, if you see a character talk, that's diegetic. But if you see like a voiceover, that was the summer of '82. That's non-diegetic.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're using all these
as far as
snappy words.
As far as I understand it.
Maybe we should define what mise en scene is too, while we're at it.
Yeah, mise en scene is just everything that you see that's in the frame.
Yeah, literally. like it's French and it literally like translates to like what's in scene or something like that, right?
Yeah, I'm not exactly. Yeah, I'm
Like
not exactly
captured
sure
in
the
scene,
direct
something like that.
translation. Mhm.
So
But
yeah,
it's just everything that's chosen to be included, like depth of frame, depth of field plays into that, and color palette plays into that, and all
and
the
it
little
includes all
details
of
of.
the wardrobe and all of the locations and all of the
Mhm.
objects in the room and all the posters on the wall. Like literally the idea that you can control literally everything that a audience sees because you are the puppet master of this universe.
The auteur,
The
yeah.
auteur.
hmm and so I thought this film did that really nicely. I thought it had really well framed shots for the most part, and compelling camera work that furthered those shots. And then compelling editing work too, which again I mentioned like the overlays that would fade into each other and kind of match up pretty nicely and smoothly, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Um, I know that this is an aside, but um, the use of sound wasn't very. I guess I didn't really notice it too much in this film, but have you guys seen Arrival? It was just David and I who did the Arrival episode, but Arrival used sound between scenes I think, in a very unique and very impactful way. Um, that was confusing because you were talking about the idea of like a motorcycle that you see at night, and then the beating of the engine continues into the next scene.
hmm hmm
Whereas in Arrival, um, you have like a new scene, or like you have the sound of the next scene begin before the video of the next scene begins, and so
Uh-huh.
you have several instances where you're a little bit like the sound is very like disjointed and confusing, and it seems to not make sense at all for what's happening. And in the film Arrival, it's used to like really great effect. It's a really great way into looking into the character's psyche in that film. So
hmm
it's a bit of an aside, but for anyone listening, if you're interested, check out our Arrival episode if you're interested in hearing some cool sound. Although I guess you won't get that from our episode, but you can hear my thoughts on the sound.
But now they already know him, Ryan.
Ah,
No, just kidding.
I thought it was interesting the relationship that Cooper had with his son. And I know it's a very small piece, but I don't know if you guys noticed that when Cooper was at the funeral and his separated wife, or his baby mama at that point, was asking him to take his son, and his son sits in the car. His son does not sit in shotgun seat. His son sits in the back of the car on the left side. Um, and he wasn't driving a cop car, I don't think, because a he wasn't like a on duty officer. He
Beat
wasn't a
cop, yeah.
patrol, a beat cop. He wasn't anything like that. So I thought it was really interesting that his son sits in the back of the car. It to me really was like important, like physical evidence of like him and his son not being close.
hmm And like that even is like hinted that that would happen when he's talking to that counselor in the second part, and he's like, I have trouble looking at my son. Like I have trouble looking at him because I'm just every time I look at him, I'm reminded of that other kid whose
Mm-hmm.
dad that I stole,
Yeah.
and like, and maybe that's the result in a way of years of those type of feelings and how that accumulates to maybe alienating his son in a way.
Yeah. I mean, his son certainly seemed starved for affection, and he never gets it
hmm
from Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper expects his son to stay out of the way and not cause trouble for him, and that's
hmm
that's all we get from that relationship, which is
I thought it was
interesting.
also interesting.
Oh, continue, please.
Jacob, not Jacob, sorry, Jason. Uh, that his he seemed to have a decent family life. Like he seemed to have a good father. The father seemed to be a pretty supportive figure and wanting to be involved and
Yeah,
helpful of him.
and he had a
And
stepsister or a half sister.
yeah,
Yeah,
and she seemed to be doing like okay, like struggling in math, sure, but like seemed to be socially well adjusted. And so like I wonder why it became such a fixation of his when he started wanting to know about his father, in a sense, because he was just 1 year old when that happened, all that stuff happened, and he would have had 15 years to have been raised by his father, right? Kofi,
Kofi.
Kofi. Uh, but it still didn't seem like they were really bonded in that type of relationship. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, and again, that's kind of what I go back to when I say that we don't really have many scenes with Kofi in it. I mean,
Mhm.
we have a few scenes with Kofi, and in the lion's share of them, he is not talking. Um, he's just kind of there. Like the only time we actually see them interact is when they're like getting milkshakes and Kofi's making like Star Wars jokes to
Mhm.
to him. So it shows that they do have like this. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I agree with you. It's interesting that this would have happened to him when he was like 17. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and it was also really interesting. I didn't pick up on it until the end because I think Ro, or I need to look at her name again, Romina, had such a weird name that I just never remembered Ava Mendes' character's name. But when Gosling was on the phone before Bradley Cooper shot him, I thought he kept saying bro, bro, don't tell my son about me. But he was saying ro, like he was talking to Ava Mendes' character. Because
Bro, bro.
I thought he was talking to the guy who helped him like rob banks. I thought he was like, bro,
Oh.
Mm.
bro, don't do it. But so the idea, it's really interesting because Ava's son it asks her, why won't you tell me about my dad? And I didn't pick it up until the end that she didn't tell her she didn't tell him about his dad, probably for several reasons, but one of them might be because Gosling called her on the phone and told her to not tell their son about him,
Mhm.
which is interesting because it shows again that she has this like loyalty or like magnetism to him as a character, handsome Luke.
Yeah, I wonder if Jason would have had the same reaction about wanting to figure out who his father was if he had learned that his father was just a robber, kind of dissolute character from the very beginning, you
Yeah,
know? Like
and
if he had known that.
yeah, and I think it goes back. Oh man, the first time when he sees the repairman, and the repairman like he finds the green glasses that Gosling
Mhm.
had when he robbed banks, and he says, you know, I know your dad would have wanted you to have them. I just know it. I know it. But his dad said, "Don't tell my son about me." So I mean, like clearly he's saying that because he wants this boy to be happy or to like think positively of his dad.
Mhm.
Maybe because he feels guilty about that.
I'd
But like,
imagine he would.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like clearly not because like he thinks that's what the dad would have liked. Like that seemed like a decision that he made for himself to like cheer that boy up in that moment so that the repairman could feel better about like what he did in the past. I thought that was really interesting because I don't think Gosling's character would have wanted him to have those sunglasses. I don't think he would have wanted him to ever go to that place, um, and he did.
Beyond the Pines.
The
Yeah.
place beyond the pines. Well,
Yeah, that character was interesting. That repairman character, like,
yeah,
is I thought he was a kind of interesting character on a for a couple of different reasons. Just that he kind of appears out of nowhere, and he kind of appears in an intense way. That like shaky cam racing through the woods on he's just on a four-wheeler doing the same, and all of a sudden he's one lifting it down, and then that's that character.
uh huh.
And here he is, and they develop a rapport and a kind of relationship. And then start robbing banks. And but then as quickly as they rob banks, the guy's like, "Nope, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore." Um,
He was surprisingly sage for the kind of character he was when he said,
yeah.
if you ride like lightning, you'll crash like thunder."
Apparently, that line was improvised by him That's also what the IMDb said. That was an improvised line by him.
I just like
That's
Um,
great.
he seemed a little bit too like trenchant and a little bit too too present in that scene when he was supposed to be completely shit faced, and
hmm
like his makeup was, in my opinion, a little bit overdone because like it clearly looked like he
Yeah,
was like it clearly looked like
purple
he
and
had like a foundation of like white with like eyeshadow and um the eyeliner. That's the one.
He drunk himself sober.
Yeah. I just like imagine like a drunk guy like hours before he would have thought like, oh, okay, yeah, ride like lightning, yeah, crash like thunder, okay, I got it. And then by the time Gosling shows up, he's like, ride like, bleh, and then just pukes. I think that's
That'd
how
be
it
more
really would have
realistic.
gone down.
But that character then like decides pretty just randomly in the film. We see him start to like sabotage Ryan Gosling's bike. He cuts it in half.
yeah,
Yeah,
Um,
I
instead
could.
of like
just to save
talking
him
to Ryan
from
Gosling
himself.
more, yeah. But instead of talking to him more, he just decides to cut it in half, and that he thinks that that's the best that's the best way to help this guy. I'll just cut his bike in half.
Yeah,
But then
it seems
Ryan Gosling
strange.
points a gun in his mouth. He should have known that would have happened, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, he
like
cuts
maybe
his bike in half, and then I thought he was gonna be gone, but instead he's just blackout drunk.
mm,
Yeah, that was
and
strange.
like
That seemed a little bit to me. That seemed a little bit. I don't know. That seemed a little bit unnuanced as a way to have like, because we know that Ryan Gosling like definitely maintained that black bike and definitely liked it and it was definitely in great condition. And then like
uh-huh.
it seemed like a way to force his character to like unravel more with like a new bike,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah, I
fine.
don't
I
know.
mean, most movies have something like that. It just
I think maybe he did it like more for himself. Like you said at the end of the movie, he gave the sunglasses probably against the real wishes of what Ryan Gosling's character would have wanted. But maybe he cut the bike in half not to save Ryan Gosling, but to just absolve himself and say, "Hey, I did what I could. I washed my hands of this guy. Like, if he crashes and burns, if he crashes like thunder, it's not my fault. Not my deal anymore. I did what I could. You know."
true that. True that.
Um,
It seemed consistent with the character that
mhm.
he was established as.
Yeah, it's just more for his own peace of mind and going on living than it is for any. I don't know. But he did seem to like Ryan Gosling's character. Like at the end, I didn't disbelieve him when he said that he thought that Ryan Gosling was like a good man. But
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they didn't
I
know
don't
each
know
other
what.
very well. But you're right.
Mhm.
So okay, what did you guys? Why don't we give this some ratings, wrap it up, and then trash talk David a little bit.
Sure.
sounds good.
Um, I guess I'll go because of that silence that just happened. I think that the film was pretty cool. I personally was impressed. Maybe I shouldn't have been impressed, but I was very impressed by the point of view shift. I ate that shit up. That to me
hmm
that was really cool. I don't know that I'd ever seen that in a film before. Where and maybe that speaks to my ignorance of film, but like having like a main character have like an entire story arc within 40 minutes and then die and then have another character take over and then have that character remain in the story but then kind of become background to his son and the other son. It seemed like a cool use of point of view. I thought it was an interesting story. I'm not like it seemed odd that like the themes of like the cyclical nature of families or like the cyclical nature of like your sins coming back to haunt you and your family. It kind of seemed odd that those themes were there because the rest of the film was mostly devoid of that. Like kind of like thematic substance. Um, I give this film 36 pine trees out of 47 pine trees.
I also enjoyed this film. I think I enjoyed it more the second time that I watched it than the first. And so that says a lot about a movie, I guess. That you're some movies you see just you see through it more the second time you watch it. Some movies you see more of the nuance, and this for me was more of the latter than the former. I really liked the first third. I thought it was gorgeous. I thought the cinematography, editing, the acting was just really strong. That continued throughout the film, not to the same level I felt of the first third, but that's not to take away from the latter parts of the film. Like you said, Ryan, I thought the character shifting and the focus was really well done, and I really like how they really lingered on that shot of Ryan Gosling just broken on the ground, just zooming in on him, forcing you to kind of come to grips with like, we just killed the main character. Like, look at this. He's dead. This guy's not getting up right now. Like, I thought that was like pretty well done, and just making you, forcing you to just like let this character, die, and then moving on to different, how it ties together. I like how it does tie together. I like I guess I got a sense of redemption out of it at the end when the son didn't kill. He chose to not forgive per se, but just chose to escape. And maybe he'll continue on the same path as his father. Maybe he won't. But at least for now, he didn't make the right choice in choosing to get that gun in the first place, but he made the choice in not killing him, which maybe speaks to his future differently than it does to his father's. I enjoyed the transitions. I enjoyed the music. I thought it was a pretty compelling score for the emotion of the film. We didn't talk about the acting very much, but I did enjoy all the acting. I didn't have a character that I really thought did a poor job.
I have one more thing. I guess in terms of casting for Eva Mendes and Gosling's son, I can't believe that would be their son. They're too
yeah.
They're too beautiful and endowed, and she's too dark to have him be this kid who we never hear him speak Spanish, although his grandma lives with him and only speaks Spanish. And he's just not a sexy enough child. That's my
not sexy enough.
I was watching this with a friend, and my friend, the first comment they had when she saw the baby, that's one ugly baby. Which it doesn't seem like they'd make an ugly baby.
I don't think so.
But
his acting was good, in my opinion. I just didn't like the casting.
Yeah. The only acting that I would ever bring up as maybe something to talk about was in a negative light would be Avery Jr. AJ. Maybe he was a little over the top in I'm a whatever, but he's also a high schooler, right? And he is that obnoxious kind of that. So I really had no problems with that. I actively enjoyed most of the acting in this film, and I would rate it ultimately probably a solid 6.5, 6 or 6.5 out of 8 robbed banks.
Only halfway, huh?
One half job.
Job half done. All right. Well, I also really enjoyed the film. I think, like Ryan, my favorite aspect was that they were able to change the perspectives of the characters, those point of view shifts, and still make it flow very well. You can still keep along with the story, and it doesn't really break from keeping you enthralled with the movie at all. I thought that was very well done. And I also enjoyed the music, those transitions, with especially in Ryan Gosling's first third of the movie. And I'll have to think of my rating in a little bit here, but I have a few more points. I also enjoyed Robin's character, because at first, when they first introduced him, Nate, you mentioned the shaky cam scene. I thought that was going to be Luke's next victim, or something bad was going to happen, especially with that music. I'm not entirely sure if that was a song or if that was part of the original score, but I thought that scene was really well done, because it's just hey, yeah, I'll take you into town. He just agrees, and they become best friends, and Robin Banks. But yeah, that was kind of threw me for a loop for a second. But so I think I'd give it see. 8 bad tattoos out of 10.
Cool. So David wasn't able to be here today. Neither was Jonathan. Jonathan wasn't able to be here because of my scheduling conflict. So I think he's off the hook. But maybe we can trash David a bit for choosing his brother's dog over us today.
Goodness gracious, David.
David is such a sparkly vampire that he wasn't cast as an extra on Twilight, but they used his skin sweat to sparkle the other vampires in that film.
Is that an insult, though?
I'm not sure.
David probably looked like that baby of Eva Mendes and Ryan Gosling. This kind of when he was a baby.
Shit.
Oh.
Greasy vampire.
Greasy vampire baby.
The sequel.
The sequel.
Let's get some hatred from you, Thomas.
Oh,
Everyone's
I didn't realize.
I thought that you were just.
You realize you were waiting on hate.
I thought you were just heating up. I thought that pause was you.
Oh yeah. I'm brewing inside.
Yeah.
Brewing inside.
The fire is
Gathering mana.
David, how dare you love dogs instead of us? You're not even my favorite person. God damn you.
Damn.
Whoa.
Laying down the heat.
Okay.
You dog lover.
Damn. Oh.
With that
okay.
erect dog in the movie.
Yeah. David Wilson is such a pervert that he is playing and dancing with his erect dog right now.
We'll have to go back in the film and check. I don't know. That may have just
you can
been
go back and check that. I'm fine with not remembering that dog with an erection. I'm
I don't know what that says about me Freudian wise.
Yeah. Or just like
I don't know if I want to.
Yeah, I don't know if Freud had much to say about bestiality, but
I'm sure he probably had something to say. I wonder what Freud would say about this movie. Fixated with all the father figures.
Ooh. Speaking of fixations, I want to talk about Gosling's clear, like, acting fixation with having something in his mouth all the time. Because in Drive, it was always a toothpick, and in this film, it was always cigarettes. And I think it's kind of like it's kind of like a
oral fixation.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Brad Pitt thing, where like Brad Pitt really likes to act with, like, eating food. Like he really loves that, especially in the Ocean's films, but. I don't know. That's a bit of an aside. Thank you guys today for joining me. Thank you for being a part of this. It was lovely.
But no thanks to David.
But no thanks to David. And
None.
question mark thanks to Jonathan.
Thanks.
So, thanks.
Maybe.
See you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of The Digital North. Check us out on our YouTube page at The Curious Magnet and follow us on Facebook at The Curious Magnet. And make sure to check out our website at curiousmagnet.com without the, just Curious Magnet. At the moment, we're only uploading new episodes onto YouTube due to my website design ineptitude, but be patient because a slick new website is in the works. And that means we can begin hosting our podcast episodes on our website, and we'll also get an RSS feed to host podcast episodes on iTunes and Stitcher in the near future. So that's pretty cool. We're excited about that. Anyway, thanks so much for your viewership. We really appreciate it. And as always, stay curious.